It was just another Sunday morning at St. Mark's Church, a place where the faithful gathered every week to seek solace, strength, and guidance from the Word of God. The pews were nearly full, the air thick with the scent of incense and the faint hum of whispers as the congregation settled into their seats. But today, something was different. Today, something was about to happen that would shake the very foundations of this sacred space. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Word had spread like wildfire in the days leading up to this Sunday service. A surprise guest, one of the most famous, and perhaps the most controversial man in the world, was going to attend the service. Elon Musk. Yes, the Elon Musk. Billionaire, tech mogul, and the force behind companies like SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink. The whispers had started small, a text here, a social media post there. But by the time Sunday arrived, the church was buzzing with anticipation. Would he show up? Would he bring his usual entourage of bodyguards and media? Or would he appear, humbly, like any other parishioner? The people who filled the church that morning had no idea what was about to unfold. But what they did know was that this wouldn't be just another Sunday. At the front of the church, Bishop Marcus stood, his robes flowing behind him as he prepared for the service. His strong, commanding presence was felt by everyone in the room. Bishop Marcus had been the spiritual leader of St. Mark's for over 15 years. He was loved, respected, and sometimes feared for his no-nonsense approach to faith. He didn't mince words. He called it like he saw it. And today, he had a feeling, an instinct, that this would be a day unlike any other. He adjusted his collar, his fingers brushing against the cool fabric, lost in thought for a moment. His mind wasn't on the service. It wasn't on the scripture he'd prepared to read. It was on the man who might, or might not, be sitting in one of the pews. Elon Musk. The thought of him sitting among his flock, listening to his sermon, was unsettling. Bishop Marcus had known about Musk for years. The tech titan who made headlines for his wild ideas, his revolutionary companies, and his sometimes reckless behavior. But the real question was, why was he here? Was it a publicity stunt? Or, perhaps, did Musk genuinely want something he couldn't find in his boardrooms or launchpads? Something deeper, something spiritual? The bishop's mind raced as the service began. His eyes scanned the room, his gaze flicking from person to person, until he saw him, Elon Musk, standing at the back of the church, just as the opening hymn began. The room went silent. Not a single soul dared to breathe too loudly. Elon Musk, in his signature black jacket and dark sunglasses, was there. And all at once, the crowd seemed to hold its breath. Bishop Marcus's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a man of wealth and power standing in his church. No, this was a man who had reshaped entire industries, who had become a symbol of modern ambition, of human achievement. And here he was, in this sacred space, in front of the altar. But as much as Marcus tried to steady his nerves, something gnawed at him, a deep sense of discomfort. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. This wasn't just another wealthy benefactor. This wasn't a man coming to pray for guidance. This was a man who had been a lightning rod for controversy, a man whose decisions had altered lives, for better or for worse. The church was packed, yet the silence was deafening. And it was at that moment, as Marcus stood at the pulpit, staring down at Elon Musk, that he made a decision that would change everything. He would speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He cleared his throat, his voice rising above the hum of the crowd. "Let us begin today's service with a prayer," he announced, his eyes still fixed on Musk. A prayer for wisdom, a prayer for guidance, and a prayer for those who need it most. The words hung in the air as the congregation bowed their heads. But Marcus's mind was elsewhere. It was on Musk, on the man who had spent his life pushing the boundaries of technology and space, but who now found himself in a place where technology couldn't save him. Marcus knew this man had come here for a reason. But was it the right reason? And more importantly, would he, Bishop Marcus, have the courage to say what needed to be said? As the congregation began to pray, one thought echoed in Marcus's mind, growing louder with each passing second. It's time to call him out. Bishop Marcus Montgomery had always been a man who commanded respect. With his broad shoulders, deep voice, and unwavering gaze, he looked like someone you wouldn't want to cross. But beneath the powerful exterior lay a man who had spent his life grappling with his own demons. Born into a modest family in a small town in Georgia, Marcus had always been aware of the deep divide between the haves and the have-nots. His father, a mechanic, had worked long hours to provide for his family, while his mother, a school teacher, had instilled in him a deep love for learning and helping others. It was clear from an early age that Marcus had a knack for leadership, and his church played a huge part in his upbringing. But while his parents were devout and deeply involved in their local church, Marcus had always felt something more, a calling that had yet to be defined. His youth was marked by conflict. He had always excelled academically and athletically, but there was a sense of emptiness inside him that he couldn't shake. It was as if something was missing, a hole in his soul that none of his achievements could fill. He was a bright star in a small town, but no matter how much success he achieved, he couldn't escape the lingering feeling of dissatisfaction. At 18, Marcus left Georgia for a scholarship at a prestigious university in Chicago. There, he was exposed to new ideas, new ways of thinking, and new people from all walks of life. He spent countless hours in the library, reading theology, philosophy, and history, attempting to find the answers to the questions that had plagued him for years. But despite his studies, his restlessness only grew. It wasn't until he met Pastor Josephine Harris that Marcus felt he had found his true calling. Pastor Harris, a wise, compassionate woman, saw through Marcus's facade and recognized the pain that lingered beneath his polished exterior. She took him under her wing, teaching him not only the power of faith, but also the importance of confronting one's own shortcomings. By the time Marcus was 30, he had completed his seminary training and was ordained as a priest. His first few years in the ministry were difficult, full of personal struggles and moments of doubt. He had lost his mother to cancer, which shook him to his core. But it was through that pain that Marcus found the strength to truly commit himself to his faith. He became known for his impassioned sermons, his ability to connect with people from all walks of life, and his unyielding belief that everyone, no matter their past, could be redeemed. But what Marcus hadn't prepared for was the weight of leadership. When he became the bishop of St. Mark's Church 5 years ago, he inherited a congregation that was struggling. The church had lost its way, its attendance dwindling, and its influence diminishing. Yet Marcus was determined to rebuild. His charisma and fierce devotion to the community helped breathe new life into the church, and attendance soared. His words had power, his sermons were profound, and his presence commanded the room. Still, with every step forward, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his work wasn't done. There was a void, a nagging, persistent sense that something was missing. It wasn't until Elon Musk walked into his church that Marcus realized what he had been searching for. Elon Musk, the world's most talked about billionaire. A man who had the power to change the world but whose public persona often bordered on the controversial. And now, for reasons that neither Marcus nor anyone else could fully understand, he was sitting in the very pews of St. Mark's Church. Marcus couldn't deny it. The thought of Musk coming to his church filled him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. On the surface, Musk was the epitome of success. Visionary, trailblazer, the man who sent rockets to space and created cars that could drive themselves. But Marcus had always believed that true greatness wasn't measured by wealth or innovation alone. It was about character, integrity, and compassion. And as much as the world admired Musk, Marcus couldn't help but wonder if those qualities were lacking in him. The bishop's internal struggle was real. As a man of faith, he had spent his life helping others find their way, guiding them through times of crisis and doubt. But what about his own crisis? What about the doubts that whispered to him late at night, when he was alone with his thoughts? This encounter with Musk wasn't just a meeting of two men. It was a test of everything Marcus had built his life around. Was he ready to stand firm in his faith, even when faced with someone like Musk, whose worldview seemed so different from his own? Would he be able to call Musk out for his actions, or would he cave under the weight of Musk's influence and power? As Marcus stood there, his mind racing, he knew that this moment could very well define the rest of his ministry. What would he do? Would he let Musk off the hook? or would he confront him with the hard truths of his actions? And so, as the congregation sat quietly, absorbed in the ritual of the service, Marcus knew that everything was about to change. The storm that had been brewing in his heart was finally here. The question was, would he have the courage to face it head-on? Elon Musk had always been a figure shrouded in mystery. To some, he was a visionary genius, a man who saw beyond the limitations of the present and dared to imagine a future where humanity was not bound to Earth. To others, he was a reckless billionaire, a man who played with the lives of everyday people for the sake of profit and technological advancement. But behind the headlines, behind the public persona, was a man struggling with the weight of his own ambition. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971, Elon's early years were anything but typical. His father, Elon Musk, was a successful electromechanical engineer and property developer. But Elon's relationship with his father was strained, to say the least. Elon was often distant, a harsh critic of his son's every move. Elon's mother, May Musk, on the other hand, was a model and dietitian who worked tirelessly to provide for her children. Though she supported Elon's dreams, she had her own issues to deal with, issues that would shape the way Elon viewed the world. From an early age, Elon displayed an unusual curiosity and intelligence. He taught himself computer programming at the age of 12, creating his first video game, Blaster, which he sold for $500. But despite his natural talents, Elon struggled with the social aspects of school. He was often bullied for being different, for being the odd one out in a country where he didn't quite fit in. This isolation fueled his desire to escape, to make something of himself that no one could take away. By the time Elon was 17, he left South Africa for Canada, seeking a new life and a chance to make something of himself in the United States. He enrolled at Queen's University in Ontario, before transferring to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned degrees in both physics and economics. His time at university was a period of intense self-reflection, as he realized that his true passion lay in technology and innovation. It wasn't just about making money, it was about changing the world. In 1995, at the age of 24, Elon dropped out of a PhD program at Stanford University after just 2 days, opting instead to pursue his entrepreneurial dreams. He co-founded Zip2, a software company that provided online city guides to newspapers, which was eventually sold to Compaq for nearly $300 million. This windfall allowed Musk to dive into the world of technology and space exploration, founding X.com, which later became PayPal, and eventually building the companies that would define his career: SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink. From the outside, it seemed that Elon's rise to the top had been meteoric, and for the most part, it had been. But his success came with its fair share of pain and sacrifice. His personal life was a tumultuous roller coaster, filled with failed marriages, strained relationships with friends, and an increasing sense of isolation. Despite his immense wealth, Elon often felt lonelier than ever, the weight of his responsibilities and his inability to connect with others pressing heavily on him. As he built his empire, Elon began to see himself not just as a businessman, but as a man on a mission. His ventures in space exploration with SpaceX were driven by a deep-seated belief that humanity needed to become a multi-planetary species in order to survive. With Tesla, he sought to revolutionize the automobile industry and push the world towards sustainable energy. But with each new breakthrough, the pressure to keep innovating, to keep changing the world, grew. In many ways, Elon had become a prisoner of his own ambition. The very thing that had driven him to success had also driven him to the edge. The sacrifices he'd made, his marriages, his relationships with family, his own mental well-being, were starting to take their toll. Now, as he sat in the pew of St. Mark's Church, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of discomfort. He had attended this service at the urging of a friend, someone who believed that faith could help him find peace in his chaotic world. He wasn't sure what to expect. For years, he had pushed aside any notion of faith, choosing instead to focus on science, technology, and the pursuit of progress. But now, in this quiet church, something was stirring inside him. Was it possible that there was more to life than the companies he had built, the rockets he had launched, the cars he had created? He looked around at the congregation, their eyes closed in prayer, their heads bowed in reverence. For the first time in a long time, he felt out of place. The world had always treated him like a god, an innovator, a genius, a savior of sorts. But here, in this humble church, he was just a man who had made his mark on the world, but who had also left behind a trail of broken relationships, loneliness, and regrets. As the service continued, Elon's thoughts drifted. He thought about his latest projects, about the plans for Mars, the future of electric cars, the possibilities of brain-machine interfaces. But as much as these endeavors excited him, he couldn't help but wonder if there was more to life than technological progress. Could he truly change the world if he couldn't change himself? And then, as if on cue, his thoughts were interrupted by the voice of Bishop Marcus. The bishop's sermon was strong, passionate, and filled with conviction. Elon listened intently, his eyes narrowing as the words seemed to cut through the noise of his mind. The bishop spoke of redemption, of finding purpose beyond wealth and power, and of the importance of humility. Elon wasn't sure what to make of it. He had heard similar messages from others. His mother had tried to instill some sense of spiritual belief in him when he was younger, but he had always resisted. Yet something about the way Marcus spoke resonated with him in that moment. Was this the answer he had been looking for? Could faith really provide the peace and fulfillment he had been chasing for so long? Or was this just another distraction from the reality of his life? A life that seemed increasingly out of his control? Elon's gaze shifted to the front of the church, where Bishop Marcus stood, his eyes locked on him. There was something in the bishop's stare, something piercing, that made Elon's heart race. It wasn't just curiosity, it was a challenge. In that moment, Elon knew that something was about to happen. A confrontation, a moment of reckoning. The service continued as the congregation listened to Bishop Marcus speak, but Elon's mind was far from the sermon. His thoughts were churning with uncertainty and something he hadn't felt in years: vulnerability. Here he was, the man who had sent rockets to space, built electric cars, and redefined entire industries, sitting quietly in a pew, a stranger among people whose lives seemed far simpler than his own. Marcus's words echoed in Elon's ears, cutting through the noise of his mind. True strength doesn't come from wealth or power. It comes from humility, from recognizing that we are all just small pieces of a much larger puzzle. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had been on a mission to save humanity, to push the limits of what was possible. But in doing so, he had often pushed away the very things that made life worth living. His relationships, his own sense of inner peace, and now, even his connection to God. He thought of the billion-dollar deals he had closed in boardrooms filled with ambition and greed, the unrelenting pressure to innovate, to be the best. But in all that time, had he ever stopped to think about the purpose behind it all? What was the point of all this if he couldn't find peace within himself? Elon's gaze shifted back to the front of the church, and that's when he saw it, the subtle shift in Bishop Marcus's demeanor. The bishop's eyes were locked on him, no longer scanning the room but staring directly at him with a quiet intensity. It wasn't judgment, but something deeper, something that felt like an invitation to question, to reflect, and perhaps even to challenge. Elon felt a stir of something within him, an instinctual push against the uncomfortable feeling he was experiencing. This wasn't a place he had ever imagined he'd be, sitting here, in a church, confronting the idea of faith. But it was clear that this was no ordinary service. The presence of the bishop and the weight of his words created an atmosphere thick with tension, as though the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Marcus, too, could feel the shift. His mind had been racing since he had first laid eyes on Elon Musk. The tech mogul was not just any ordinary visitor. He was a man who had done more to reshape the world than anyone could have predicted. And yet, the bishop couldn't shake the feeling that Musk was lost, caught in the same web of ambition, success, and emptiness that so many others had struggled with before him. Marcus's hands rested on the pulpit, and he leaned slightly forward, his voice growing stronger as he continued his sermon. But in his mind, he was preparing for the moment when he would speak directly to Elon. He had spent years teaching people the power of redemption, the necessity of humility, and the importance of community. But never, in all his years as a leader, had he been in a position like this. He could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on him, like a storm cloud ready to burst. His gut told him that this encounter was not just an opportunity for a conversation. It was a divine moment, one that could change everything. But there was something about Musk's presence that unsettled him. The man was a living paradox, someone who believed in science and technology, but whose life seemed to lack the very thing that could bring him peace: faith. As Marcus spoke, the tension in the room became palpable. Every word felt like a potential turning point. Would this service end as every other had, with the congregation quietly returning to their lives? Or would something far greater unfold before their eyes? And then, the moment came. Just as Marcus was finishing his sermon, he paused. The room went silent. For the briefest second, all eyes were on him. And then, his gaze shifted to Elon Musk. Without warning, Bishop Marcus took a deep breath and spoke, his voice resonating throughout the church. "Elon Musk," he began, his tone measured but firm, "you have built empires. You've made history. But what have you built for your soul?" The words hung in the air, sharp and penetrating. It was a question that no one in the room had expected, least of all Elon. Elon's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. He could feel the eyes of the entire congregation on him, but none more intense than the gaze of Bishop Marcus. There was no escaping it. What had he built for his soul? The question echoed in Elon's mind. All these years of groundbreaking technology, all the wealth and recognition, it had come at the cost of something much deeper. His personal life had crumbled. His relationships had faltered. And now, here he was, in the middle of a church, being confronted with the reality that he had neglected something crucial. He glanced around, searching for a way out. But there was no easy exit. There was no way to dodge the question that had just been thrown at him so directly, so openly. The room seemed to hold its breath. Elon's mind raced. What was he supposed to say to that? How could he answer a question like that? One that cut to the heart of who he was, of everything he had built. But before he could gather his thoughts, Bishop Marcus continued. "The world looks at you and sees a genius, a man who can change everything. But I wonder, does the world see the man behind the genius? The one who struggles with loneliness, who questions his purpose, who wonders if all the success means anything at all?" Elon's face flushed. He had never been spoken to like this. Not in public, not in front of so many people. The words stung, but there was truth to them. Truth that he had been running from for years. The silence that followed was thick with anticipation. Everyone in the church seemed to be waiting for something, waiting for Elon to respond, to say something that would either confirm or reject the challenge Bishop Marcus had laid before him. Elon could feel his chest tightening. The eyes of the congregation felt like a spotlight, but it wasn't their gaze that troubled him. It was Marcus's words, his bold, unflinching words. For the first time in a long time, Elon felt exposed. And deep down, he knew something was changing. The church was silent. The air seemed charged, electric, as if a storm was brewing just beneath the surface. Elon Musk sat frozen, his mind racing, his heart pounding in his chest. The weight of Bishop Marcus's words hung over him like a cloud, pressing down on him in a way he wasn't accustomed to. For all his accomplishments, for all his innovations, he had never been challenged like this. He glanced up at the bishop, whose eyes were steady, unwavering, as if he had been waiting for this moment his entire life. It wasn't just the challenge itself that struck Elon. It was the certainty in Marcus's voice, the way he spoke as though he knew something Elon didn't. For the first time in years, Elon felt a flicker of doubt, an unfamiliar sensation. He had spent his life building things that no one thought possible. Rockets that soared beyond Earth, electric cars that changed the world's entire approach to energy. But all of that seemed so hollow in this moment. The question lingered. What have you built for your soul? He thought about the countless hours he had spent working, the marriages that had crumbled in the wake of his obsession with success, the friends who had slowly drifted away. He had all the wealth and power a man could dream of, but none of it had brought him the peace he so desperately sought. He thought about his children, his 5 sons, and the strained relationship he had with them. Could he really look them in the eye and tell them he had done everything for them? For his soul? For something more than just his empire? Before Elon could formulate a response, the congregation's hushed whispers began to grow louder. People were starting to turn their heads, some exchanging glances, others waiting for something to happen. The tension in the room was palpable, and the moment had gone from a simple confrontation to something bigger, something more significant. Bishop Marcus could feel it too. He knew this moment wasn't just about him. It was about everything that had led him here. The years of struggle, the battles within himself, the choices that had shaped his life and his ministry. He had spent so much of his life speaking of redemption, of the importance of love and humility. But now, faced with Elon Musk, he felt that he was being called to live those words in a way he had never anticipated. In that moment, Marcus knew it wasn't just about confronting Elon. It was about confronting his own faith. Could he be the man he preached to others about being? Was he ready to challenge not just Musk, but himself as well? He took a step forward, lowering his voice just enough for the whole room to hear. "Elon," he said, his tone softer now but still filled with conviction. "I don't ask these questions to tear you down, but to help you see something greater. We all have our roles to play in this world. But what happens when the things we build out of ambition and desire for power come at the cost of what truly matters?" Elon's mind whirled. What truly matters? He could feel the sharp sting of Marcus's words. For all his technological brilliance, had he really lost sight of the core values that made life worth living? Could his vision for humanity's future be clouded by his own need for validation? Elon's voice cracked as he finally found the words. "I don't know." He wasn't used to admitting that. Elon Musk, the world's most visionary entrepreneur, rarely acknowledged uncertainty. But here, in this church, in this moment, he couldn't deny it. He had no clear answer. Marcus nodded, his eyes filled with a strange understanding. He wasn't looking at Elon as a billionaire or a celebrity, but as a fellow human being. Someone lost in the same way that so many others had been lost. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," Marcus said gently, "but you do have to ask the questions. And more importantly, you have to listen for the answers. In the quiet, in the stillness of your soul." For the first time since stepping into this church, Elon's heart began to slow. There was something in Marcus's words, something deeper than the harsh realities of his business dealings and tech empire, that resonated with him. Something that he had been searching for, but had never quite found, no matter how many rockets he sent into space. The tension in the room started to lift as the congregation returned to their prayer. But for Elon, nothing would be the same. He had heard the call, felt the weight of it, and was now standing at the precipice of something much larger than himself. The journey ahead would not be easy, but there was no turning back now. As Elon left the church that day, his mind was spinning with 1,000 questions. Marcus's words had stirred something deep inside him. Could he really change? Could he find peace in the very thing he had always ignored? His faith? And more than that, could he learn to embrace humility, to let go of the control he had so desperately clung to for so many years? The drive back to Tesla headquarters was long, and Elon sat in the back seat of his Tesla Model S, staring out of the window as the world passed by in a blur. He was still processing everything that had happened at the church. Bishop Marcus's words reverberated in his mind like a drumbeat. What have you built for your soul? He had spent so many years building empires of technology and innovation, but what had it all amounted to? Was he truly happy? Did any of it matter if, deep down, he was still searching for something that could give him peace? The city of Palo Alto appeared ahead, its familiar streets lined with towering office buildings and high-tech campuses. Tesla's headquarters loomed in the distance, a symbol of his ambition, his dream of changing the world for the better. But today, it felt like just another place. Another achievement in a long list of achievements that, for the first time, seemed empty. As the car pulled into the parking garage, Elon didn't immediately exit. He sat there in silence for several minutes, his fingers tapping against the leather seat. His thoughts were fragmented, racing in all directions. Was it possible for someone like him to change? Was it too late? The truth was, Elon didn't know what he was searching for. He had built rockets, electric cars, and solar technology, things that he believed would transform the future of humanity. But in doing so, he had alienated the very people who mattered most to him. His marriages had fallen apart. His relationships with his children were strained. His friends had drifted away. He had always believed that if he just worked harder, achieved more, he would find satisfaction. But now, in this moment of clarity, he realized that success without connection, without meaning, was hollow. The sound of his phone buzzing broke through his thoughts. He glanced down at the screen. An incoming text from his brother, Kimball. Elon, I've been thinking a lot about what you said last night. I know you're going through something. Just know I'm here for you. Don't forget that we're family. Elon swallowed hard. He hadn't been the best brother, and he knew it. Kimball was always the more grounded one, the one who understood the importance of relationships and community. But Elon had always been too focused on his work to truly appreciate his family, and now, in this moment of vulnerability, he regretted it. He typed a quick response, "Thanks, Kimball. I'll call you later." Elon put the phone down and exited the car, stepping into the sleek, high-tech world he had built. But the truth was, none of it felt real anymore. He walked through the halls of Tesla's headquarters, the bright, polished surfaces and futuristic designs only serving to highlight how disconnected he felt from everything. It wasn't long before he found himself in his private office, the walls lined with pictures of rockets, electric cars, and space missions. He paced in front of his desk, running his hands through his hair. The weight of the world seemed to press down on him. He was on the verge of a breakthrough, a mission to Mars, the next step in humanity's future, but for the first time, he wasn't sure it was enough. His thoughts drifted back to the church, to Marcus, to the challenge he had been given. What have you built for your soul? The question haunted him. Without thinking, Elon picked up his phone again and searched for a church nearby. He wasn't sure why he was doing it, but something deep within him urged him to take that step, to explore what he had been missing all these years. Within minutes, he found a small, local church, St. John's Episcopal Church. It wasn't far from Tesla's headquarters, and he decided to go. The drive was brief, but it felt like the longest journey of his life. He didn't know what he was expecting. Maybe just a place to sit and think, a space to escape the constant hum of his ambitions. When he arrived, the church was quiet. The doors were open, and the soft glow of candlelight spilled out into the cool evening air. Elon hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The interior was simple. No grand architecture or over-the-top decorations, just wooden pews and the faint scent of incense lingering in the air. He slowly made his way to the back of the church and sat down in an empty pew. The silence was almost deafening, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. Elon closed his eyes and allowed himself to just breathe. He didn't know how long he sat there, but it felt like time had slowed down. It wasn't the usual sense of control he was used to. It wasn't about managing schedules, meetings, or projects. It was just being. In that stillness, he allowed himself to think. What had he been searching for all these years? Was it the next big breakthrough? The next revolution in technology? Was it to be the man who would save humanity? Or was there something deeper that he had ignored for far too long? He thought about his children, his failed relationships, and the countless sacrifices he had made for his career. Could he have been wrong all along? Could the answers he sought be found not in space or electric cars, but in something simpler, something spiritual? As the minutes stretched on, Elon felt a quiet realization settle over him. He had been so focused on the future that he had neglected to live in the present. He had been so focused on what the world needed that he had forgotten to consider what he needed. His soul, the one thing that had always remained just out of reach, had been crying out for attention. And now, he was finally listening. The following days after his visit to St. John's Episcopal Church felt like a blur to Elon. His mind, once consumed with rockets, electric cars, and technological marvels, had been redirected. The stillness of the church had done something to him that he couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just the quiet atmosphere or the flickering candlelight. It was the space it provided for his soul to breathe, to catch up with everything he had pushed aside in his pursuit of greatness. Elon hadn't shared his visit with anyone. Not his family, not his team, not even his closest friends. It felt too personal, too raw. In the days that followed, he found himself seeking out more quiet moments, spending time with his children, sitting in nature, and more, turning to the idea of faith. He began reading. Not business books, not tech reports, but books about spirituality and personal growth. He stumbled across a text by a well-known theologian, the kind of author he never thought he would be interested in. Yet, as he flipped through the pages, he found himself captivated by the ideas of humility, grace, and the search for a higher purpose. Ideas that felt entirely foreign to his fast-paced, high-stakes world. In one particular passage, the author wrote, "The soul cannot thrive when it is buried beneath the weight of its own ambitions. It flourishes when it is freed to live with compassion, with love, and with peace." Elon felt a strange sense of peace reading those words. For the first time in a long time, he felt as though he was on the right path, even if he wasn't entirely sure where that path would lead. One afternoon, as he was preparing for an important meeting at Tesla, he found himself distracted again. This time, it wasn't the technological innovations calling for his attention, but the question that had been haunting him for days. What have you built for your soul? He could feel the pressure of the world still bearing down on him. The expectations, the promises, the missions that needed to be accomplished. But for the first time, there was a conflict brewing inside of him. The pressure to succeed, the thing that had driven him for years, was beginning to feel like a weight, not a motivator. He was no longer sure what success really meant. It had once been about changing the world, being the person who made history, the visionary who disrupted industries. But now, it felt like something was missing, something essential. Elon had never been one to make impulsive decisions, but the idea of visiting the church again, a place where he felt he could truly reflect, was becoming too strong to ignore. He realized he needed guidance, and he knew that Bishop Marcus, the one who had challenged him so directly, might be able to help him make sense of it all. That evening, after finishing a long day at Tesla, Elon found himself standing outside the doors of St. John's Episcopal Church once more. The church was empty, save for a handful of people attending a small evening service. It felt peaceful, almost sacred. He stepped inside quietly, as if he were entering a space that demanded reverence, not because of its grandeur, but because of its simplicity and the clarity it offered. It wasn't long before Bishop Marcus appeared, seemingly sensing his presence even before Elon had fully entered. His calm demeanor and unwavering gaze made Elon feel, for the first time in ages, that he wasn't alone in this search for meaning. "Good evening, Elon," Marcus greeted him with a soft but knowing smile. "I had a feeling you'd return." Elon returned the smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. He hadn't expected to feel so vulnerable in this place, in front of the man who had already disrupted his entire way of thinking. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Elon began, his voice quiet, "about the soul. And I think I'm starting to realize that I've spent my entire life building things for the world, things that I thought mattered. But I've never really stopped to think about what my soul needs." Marcus nodded slowly, as though he had been waiting for this moment. "It's not uncommon," he said softly. "In this world, we're taught to build, to strive, to succeed. But often, the things we build on the outside don't match the things we need inside. That's the challenge, isn't it?" Elon was quiet for a moment, his mind racing. "I feel like I've neglected the very thing I can't live without. My soul, my peace. I've been so focused on space and the future, I forgot to think about what's in front of me, what's right here." "You're not alone in that," Marcus replied. "Many people spend their lives running in one direction without considering what they're running towards. And often, it's not until they're forced to stop and reflect that they realize what they've been missing all along." Elon leaned back slightly, absorbing Marcus's words. The weight of his own realization was starting to settle in. He had done so much, and yet felt so little. But now, he was starting to understand why. "What should I do?" Elon asked, his voice filled with quiet desperation. "How do I fix this? Can I fix this?" Marcus paused for a moment before answering. "The first step is acknowledging it, as you've already done. The second is to seek balance, not just in your work, but in your relationships, in your soul. You have the ability to change the world, Elon, but you must first find the peace that you've been missing. It's not easy, but it's the only way forward." Elon stared at the floor, the weight of Marcus's words pressing against him. "I don't know where to start." "Start with yourself," Marcus replied gently. "Start by giving yourself permission to slow down, to reflect. Spend time with the people who matter to you. Look inward and listen." Elon nodded slowly, though the path ahead still seemed unclear. But for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. A quiet promise that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to move forward that didn't require him to sacrifice everything he had left. The days that followed were a blur of reflection and revelation. For the first time in years, Elon found himself at a crossroads, torn between the man he had become and the person he was beginning to realize he could be. The calls, the meetings, the business ventures, all the things that had once been the very fabric of his existence, seemed like distant echoes. He woke up early each morning, determined to carve out time for himself. It wasn't easy, with so many demands on his time, but he was finding that the more he allowed himself to disconnect from the noise of the world, the clearer his thoughts became. In the evenings, he would take long walks, often in silence, sometimes with one of his children by his side. His relationship with them, strained for so many years, was beginning to mend, though the journey was far from complete. But there was an undeniable shift. He was present with them in a way he had never been before. On one particular evening, Elon sat on the porch of his home in California with his youngest son, XAEA12, as the sun dipped below the horizon. It had been a long day of meetings and calls, but as he sat there, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the clear sky, he felt a rare sense of peace. "Hey, Dad," X asked, looking up at him with wide eyes. "Yeah, buddy?" Elon replied, his voice soft. "Why do you always work so much?" X asked, his small voice filled with curiosity. Elon paused, the question catching him off guard. He had been asked countless questions over the years, business-related, tech-related, but this one was different. This one made him think about everything that had led him to this point. He glanced down at his son, searching for the right words. "I work because I want to make the world a better place," he said, his voice tentative. "I want to help people, make things that will change the future." X didn't respond right away, but instead, he turned his gaze back to the stars. "You can make the world better without working all the time," he said, his voice matter of fact. Elon smiled, but there was an ache in his chest. His son, so young and innocent, had already grasped something that Elon had struggled with for most of his life. You can make the world better without working all the time. In that moment, it felt like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He didn't have to sacrifice everything to make a difference. He could balance his work with his family, his ambition with his soul. As the days turned into weeks, Elon found himself continuing this quiet journey of self-discovery. He returned to church when he could, finding solace in the stillness and the chance to reflect. He spent more time with his children, listening to them in ways he had never done before. But something was still missing. There was still a part of him that felt restless, that felt like the world was moving on without him. It was then that he realized he needed to take action, not just in his personal life, but in his professional life as well. He needed to make a change, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. He needed to use his platform, his influence, to inspire others to seek balance, to find peace in the midst of the chaos. The idea formed slowly but steadily, like a seed taking root. Elon began to think about ways to incorporate his newfound values into his work, his companies, and his public image. It wasn't going to be easy. There were too many forces pushing him in the opposite direction. But he was determined. One afternoon, he sat in a meeting with his top executives at Tesla. The usual talk about profitability, quarterly reports, and growth was in full swing when Elon stopped them. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice calm but steady. "We need to do something different. We've been focused on innovation for so long, but we haven't thought enough about the human side of what we're doing." The room fell silent as everyone turned to him, waiting for more. Elon continued, "We talk about sustainability, about saving the planet, but what about the people who live on it? What if we start focusing more on how our products can improve people's well-being, not just their productivity? How can we create a culture at Tesla that values balance between work and life, between ambition and peace. One of the executives, Sarah, spoke up. Elon, that's not really how we've approached things before. You've always pushed for the next big thing, the fastest timeline. I know, Elon replied. But what if the next big thing isn't about speed or power? What if it's about creating a company that nurtures its people, not just its technology? The room remained quiet as the weight of his words sank in. Elon wasn't asking for small changes. He was suggesting a complete rethinking of what Tesla stood for. It wasn't just about the cars or the rockets anymore. It was about the human element, the people who were making those innovations, and the people whose lives would be impacted by them. For the first time in a long while, Elon saw a spark of excitement in the room. Maybe they were scared of the change, but they could also feel the possibility, the potential for something new, something deeper, something more human. The meeting ended with no immediate answers, but Elon knew this was just the beginning. There was no quick fix, no one-size-fits-all solution, but he was committed to trying, to shifting the culture, not just at Tesla, but at SpaceX, at Boring Company, and beyond. He had learned one thing. The pursuit of greatness was not enough. It was never enough. But the pursuit of balance, of peace, of purpose, that was something worth striving for. And maybe, just maybe, he could start that journey with the people closest to him. The weeks that followed Elon's meeting with his executives at Tesla were filled with uncertainty. He had initiated a radical shift in the company's philosophy, but change, as he knew all too well, wasn't easy. The world he had built around him, Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, was all based on one core belief. Speed and progress were the keys to the future. Now, he was asking himself, and his teams, to consider something different, to slow down, to focus on the people and the planet, not just the product. It felt like a massive gamble, especially in Silicon Valley, where the race for innovation never stopped. Elon spent long hours in meetings with his leadership teams, discussing everything from employee well-being to work-life balance. He shared his vision of a company that didn't just change the world through technology, but did so in a way that valued the human experience. He spoke passionately about the importance of mental health, of finding peace in the chaos of life, and of creating a culture where employees were empowered to grow both professionally and personally. At first, there was resistance. Some of his top executives questioned whether it was wise to shift priorities away from the relentless pursuit of innovation and growth. They worried that focusing on the human side of things might slow Tesla's rapid pace. Elon, one of the senior engineers, Ryan, said during a tense meeting, "We've built this company into what it is by constantly pushing boundaries, by being the fastest, the most ambitious. Slowing down isn't what we're about." Elon, now more determined than ever, stood his ground. "Ryan, I'm not asking us to stop pushing boundaries. I'm asking us to push boundaries in a different way. We've shown the world that we can build electric cars, rockets, and tunnels. But now, it's time to show them that we can build something that works for people, something that works for the soul." There was a long pause in the room. Elon could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about his legacy, about the kind of world he wanted to leave behind. One of the team members, Isabella, who had been quiet for most of the meeting, finally spoke up. "What you're saying makes sense, Elon," she said, her voice thoughtful. "If we're building products that are supposed to change the world, shouldn't we make sure they're changing lives for the better? Not just in terms of technology, but in terms of how people feel, how they live." Elon's eyes lit up. Exactly. This was the vision he had been searching for. It wasn't just about the end result. It was about the journey, about creating something meaningful, something sustainable, that people could feel good about. "It's not just about the cars or the rockets," he said, more calmly now. "It's about creating an ecosystem, a culture, that puts people first. And that starts with us. If we can model that for the world, we'll not only change industries, we'll change lives." The mood in the room shifted. The resistance was still there, but it was starting to melt away. Slowly, the executives began to see the possibility. They started to realize that Tesla's success didn't have to come at the expense of their employees' happiness or their own well-being. But the challenge ahead was daunting. Elon knew that transforming a company culture was not something that could be done overnight. It would take time, patience, and, above all, leadership. He started by making small changes within the company. He implemented mindfulness programs, brought in wellness experts to speak to employees, and encouraged his leadership team to adopt a more balanced approach to their work schedules. The emphasis on productivity shifted to a more sustainable pace, with an increased focus on mental and emotional health. One of the first big changes came when Elon decided to launch a new initiative at Tesla, a company-wide mental health day. It would be a day where all employees could take a break, recharge, and focus on their well-being, without the pressure of deadlines or meetings. It was a symbolic gesture, but it sent a clear message. Tesla was changing, and so was Elon. As part of the initiative, he also started to hold regular fireside chats with employees, where they could talk openly about the company's direction and how they were feeling about the changes. It wasn't always easy. There were tough conversations, especially around the fear that the company's culture was becoming too soft. But Elon remained committed. He wanted his employees to know that their voices mattered, that their well-being was just as important as the bottom line. But this new focus on human connection and balance wasn't just happening within the confines of Tesla's walls. Elon began to advocate for it on a larger scale. He started speaking out publicly about the importance of mental health, not just in tech, but in every industry. He used his platform to call for a shift in the way businesses operated, one that took into account the well-being of their employees and the long-term sustainability of their work environments. In a keynote address at the annual World Economic Forum in Davos, Elon stunned the audience when he said, "We need to build a future that doesn't just prioritize technology, but prioritizes people. We need to create a world where work doesn't consume us, but where we're able to live, to grow, to find peace while we work." The room was quiet for a moment as attendees processed his words. It was a radical statement, especially coming from someone who had built his empire by pushing the limits of what was possible. But it was also a statement that resonated deeply with the people who heard it. In a world that had grown increasingly fast-paced and disconnected, Elon's words felt like a breath of fresh air. His new vision for Tesla, and for the world, began to gain traction. Other companies, even those in Silicon Valley, started to take notice. Some began implementing similar initiatives. A wave of change started to ripple through the business world, with more leaders acknowledging the importance of work-life balance, mental health, and employee well-being. It wasn't an easy road, and there were still challenges ahead. But Elon had taken the first step. He had shown that it was possible to be successful in business without sacrificing what truly mattered. Elon's transformation was no longer just a personal journey. It had become a movement. The changes he had initiated within Tesla began to ripple outward, affecting not only the company's employees but the wider business community as well. He had stirred something within the tech world, challenging the notion that success required sacrificing everything else. It wasn't long before his new philosophy began to catch the attention of other leaders, both in Silicon Valley and beyond. At first, the changes were small. Tesla's new Mental Health Day was seen as a quirky initiative, something that would likely be forgotten by next quarter. But as the weeks went by, something surprising happened. Employees reported feeling more engaged, more connected to their work, and, most importantly, more connected to themselves. The initiative, which started as a symbolic gesture, had quickly turned into a cornerstone of Tesla's new culture. Elon's efforts didn't stop there. He introduced regular well-being workshops where employees could learn about mindfulness, stress management, and the importance of work-life balance. These workshops weren't just for the entry-level workers. Elon himself participated in them. He was hands-on in this new initiative, leading by example. This made a profound impact on the team. They saw that their CEO wasn't just talking about balance, he was living it. One afternoon, after a particularly intense meeting, Elon sat in his office with his close confidant, Sarah, the head of operations at Tesla. The company's recent efforts had been met with mostly positive feedback, but there were still some lingering doubts. There were whispers in the hallways. Could they really afford to slow down? Was this new focus on well-being, on people, going to cost them their competitive edge? "Do you think we're pushing too far?" Elon asked Sarah, the weight of the question hanging in the air. "I know it's working on some level, but there's still resistance. People are worried that we'll lose our edge." Sarah leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "You're asking the right question, Elon. And honestly, I think the answer is no, We're not pushing too far. We're pushing in the right direction. Elon raised an eyebrow. How do you figure? I've seen it in the team's eyes, she continued. They're more motivated than ever. They're proud to work for a company that values them as people, not just as employees. That pride, that sense of belonging, it's a game changer. Elon nodded, but a part of him still felt uneasy. He had always been driven by one simple principle: change the world. But now, he was starting to realize that the way to do that wasn't through sheer force of will or technological breakthroughs alone. It was about creating something sustainable, something that would outlast him, a legacy that could endure beyond the next big product release. Still, Elon knew that this new vision had to be more than just internal change. It had to have a broader impact. If he wanted to truly change the business world, he would have to lead by example in a way that inspired others to follow. He began to reach out to other leaders, entrepreneurs, and business moguls, sharing his experiences and advocating for a new way forward. It wasn't always well received. Some saw it as a passing phase, something that would fade as soon as the next big challenge arose. But others, including several prominent figures in tech, saw the merit in Elon's new approach. They, too, had been struggling with burnout, with the pressure to constantly push and achieve, at the expense of everything else. One such leader was Mark, the CEO of a prominent Silicon Valley software company, who had been in touch with Elon for years but had always been too focused on his company's bottom line to take a step back. Mark reached out to Elon one morning, curious about what he was doing differently. "Hey, Elon," Mark said over the phone, "I've been hearing a lot about the changes you've made at Tesla. Mental health days, mindfulness, balance. It's all a bit different from what I've seen in the past. Do you really think it's working?" Elon smiled. It was always refreshing to hear from Mark, even though he'd never been one to embrace alternative approaches to leadership. "It's working," Elon said confidently. "Not just for me, but for the entire team. We're building something different here, and it's making a huge difference in how people approach their work. They're more productive, more creative, and more engaged. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's working." Mark hesitated for a moment. "I've always been skeptical about these kinds of things. I mean, we've been pushing the limits for years, and we've done pretty well. But maybe you're onto something. Maybe I've been doing it all wrong." Elon could hear the change in Mark's voice. There was a sense of curiosity, of openness. It wasn't something Elon had expected, but it was a welcome surprise. "I don't think you've been doing it wrong," Elon said gently. "I just think there's another way. You don't have to choose between success and well-being. You can have both." Over the next few months, Mark began implementing similar initiatives at his company, and soon, other tech leaders started to follow suit. It became clear that Elon's message was resonating with the new generation of business leaders, those who had seen firsthand the toll that constant stress and burnout could take on their teams. As the movement grew, so did the challenges. People questioned whether these changes would hold up in the long term, especially during a crisis or when facing the next big industry shakeup. Elon knew that maintaining this culture of balance would require constant attention. It couldn't be a one-time initiative. It had to be woven into the fabric of everything the companies did, from recruitment to product development to leadership. But even in the face of skepticism, Elon's resolve remained firm. He knew this was the right path. He could feel it in his bones. The world didn't need more burnout. It needed more sustainability, more compassion, more connection. It was a slow but steady revolution, and Elon was at the heart of it. As Elon's new approach gained momentum, the effects of his leadership philosophy began to surface in unexpected ways. The quiet but steady revolution he had set in motion was no longer just a ripple. It was beginning to look like a tidal wave, sweeping across industries and business sectors. One morning, Elon received an invitation to speak at an exclusive global summit for business leaders in Geneva. The event was a gathering of some of the most powerful CEOs, investors, and entrepreneurs from around the world, and it was clear that Elon's invitation wasn't just about his company's technological advancements anymore. His recent efforts to reshape the way businesses interacted with their employees and the world were at the forefront of the discussion. It was a huge honor, but also a significant responsibility. Elon knew that this speech could be a turning point, the moment when his ideas would either solidify as a new paradigm or be dismissed as another fleeting trend. He had already seen the growing interest in his approach, but now it was time to confront the skeptics head-on. The day of the summit arrived, and the air in the grand hall was electric. Global leaders filled the room, their chatter creating an almost palpable hum of expectation. Elon sat at the side, waiting for his moment. He could feel the weight of the eyes on him, some curious, others doubtful. He knew that this was more than just a speech. It was a chance to define the future of business leadership, to show the world that it was possible to lead with both heart and ambition. When Elon finally took the stage, the audience fell silent. He stood at the podium, his hands clasped, his mind calm. He had been here before, standing in front of audiences who expected him to deliver groundbreaking revelations about technology, about space, about the future of mankind. But today, his message was different. It was about something far less tangible but far more important: human connection. He started slowly, his voice measured and calm. Thank you for having me here today. We live in a world where progress is often defined by what we can build and how quickly we can build it. I've spent much of my life chasing the next big thing, convinced that the future was something we could construct, brick by brick, innovation by innovation. But the truth is, the future isn't just about what we build. It's about how we build it. The crowd was quiet, listening intently. Elon could feel their curiosity growing. For years, the focus has been on efficiency, speed, and profits. And while those are important, they have a cost. That cost is often our health, our relationships, and our humanity. We've seen it in our workplaces, in our families, and in our own lives. We push ourselves to the brink, thinking that success is measured by how much we can achieve. But what if success isn't about achieving more? What if success is about achieving the right things, things that matter to us as people, not just as workers or consumers? A murmur of agreement spread through the room, but there were still skeptics, their arms crossed and their expressions unreadable. Elon pressed on. I know this sounds counterintuitive. We live in a world that rewards the hustle, the grind, the constant pursuit of more. But I'm here to tell you that true progress comes when we shift our focus. True success comes when we build with a purpose that goes beyond the bottom line. When we prioritize people, our teams, our families, our communities, alongside profits. He paused, letting his words sink in. I've seen the results firsthand at Tesla, and I'm starting to see them in other companies as well. When we give our employees the tools to thrive mentally, emotionally, and physically, when we create environments that allow them to be whole human beings, they do their best work. Not just for the company, but for the world. Elon scanned the room, seeing more and more faces softened by his words. The message was starting to resonate, but it was still a tough sell for some. The old-school business leaders, those who thrived on constant competition and winning at all costs, were still skeptical. He went on, his tone a bit more impassioned now. This is not a utopian dream. This is real. The shift is already happening. It's happening at Tesla, it's happening at companies around the world, and it's happening in the hearts and minds of leaders who understand that the future isn't just about being the fastest. It's about being the most sustainable. It's about creating systems where people can succeed not by sacrificing everything, but by thriving as whole individuals. The room was still, the audience clearly reflecting on his words. Elon's message was a stark departure from the traditional mantra of business. He wasn't just promoting technology or innovation. He was advocating for a complete redefinition of what it meant to be a successful leader in the 21st century. As we look toward the future, we have a choice, he concluded. We can continue on the path we're on, a path of endless growth, burnout, and unsustainable pressure. Or we can choose a new path, one where success is measured by how well we take care of each other, by how we build a future that works for everyone. A future where technology and humanity go hand in hand. He let that last sentence hang in the air for a moment before stepping back from the podium. The silence that followed was thick, the weight of his words settling over the room like a blanket. Then, slowly, applause began to build. At first hesitant, but then stronger, more sustained. Elon knew that he had planted a seed. He couldn't predict how quickly it would grow, or how many leaders would take his words to heart. But he had made it clear. This was a new way forward, one that valued the well-being of individuals as much as the success of companies. As the summit continued, Elon found himself surrounded by people who were eager to talk to him. Many expressed interest in what he had said, some were curious, others were questioning how to implement such a shift in their own companies. But one thing was clear: Elon's message was no longer just his own. It was a message that had the potential to change the entire business landscape. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? After Elon's powerful speech at the Global Summit in Geneva, the response was nothing short of mixed. On one hand, he received an outpouring of support from younger leaders, wellness advocates, and even employees who had long been asking for a shift in corporate culture. On the other hand, the older, more established figures in the business world, many of whom had built their empires on the traditional model of competition, pressure, and unrelenting work ethic, were less convinced. In the weeks that followed, Elon found himself facing not only skepticism but outright resistance. Some of his closest allies within Tesla, the ones who had helped him build the company from the ground up, started to question the long-term viability of his new approach. They wondered if this focus on mental health, balance, and slowing down could risk their cutting-edge advantage. After all, the competition wasn't waiting around for them to find a better way. One evening, Elon sat down for dinner with his trusted chief of technology, Lucas, at a restaurant in Palo Alto. The mood was tense. Lucas had been with Tesla for years, helping push boundaries in design, engineering, and innovation. But now, as the company changed direction, he found himself at a crossroads. "Elon, I've been thinking a lot about what you said in Geneva," Lucas began, staring down at his plate. "And I get it. I really do. I'm not against the idea of balance, but I have to ask, are we sure this is the right approach? The world isn't waiting. You know that better than anyone." Elon looked up, meeting his friend's gaze. "I know, Lucas. Believe me, I know. But you've seen what burnout does. You've seen the toll it takes on the team, on productivity. If we keep pushing people to the brink, we'll lose the very people who make all of this possible." Lucas leaned forward, his voice more urgent now. "But what about the edge we've always had? We've been pushing the limits of technology, and it's been working. What happens if we slow down too much? What if the competition gets ahead?" Elon sighed, knowing this conversation was inevitable. "This isn't about slowing down, Lucas. This is about redefining what success means. We're not abandoning our commitment to innovation. But we can't keep sacrificing people's well-being for the sake of more growth. We have to build for the long term. For sustainability." There was a long silence between them, the weight of the conversation hanging heavy. Lucas was a key player in Tesla's success, and Elon knew that if he lost him, it would be a massive blow. But he also knew that the company's future depended on his ability to maintain this new course. "You're asking a lot, Elon," Lucas said quietly. "I get what you're trying to do, but it's hard to see it working in a world where everyone is focused on being the fastest, the biggest, and the most powerful." Elon nodded slowly. "It's hard, I know, but we have to believe it's worth it. For Tesla, for the people who work here, for the future we're trying to build." The conversation ended on a somber note, but Elon couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle had just begun. As much as he wanted to believe that his vision was the right one, he knew that shifting an entire company and an entire industry away from the traditional mindset would take time, and perhaps more than a few sacrifices. In the weeks that followed, Elon's team began to experience tension from both inside and outside Tesla. Some employees, especially those who had thrived under the company's previous fast-paced environment, started to question whether the changes were necessary. There was talk of a slow-down culture taking root, and some worried that Tesla was beginning to lose its edge. At the same time, the competition was fierce. Other automakers, led by companies like Rivian and traditional giants like Ford and GM, were ramping up their own electric vehicle initiatives. They had already begun closing the technological gap that Tesla had once dominated. Elon couldn't ignore the fact that while he was focused on redefining success, his competitors were doubling down on their own race for innovation, without the same focus on culture or balance. In one of the many board meetings that followed, the room was filled with a mix of concern and frustration. Tesla's stock had taken a slight dip, and although the company was still profitable, investors were growing anxious. You've changed the game, Elon. One of the senior executives, Jane, said, her voice filled with concern. But this shift you're pushing, it's risky. We've always been about innovation first. What happens when the market looks at us and sees a company that's more about mental health than about performance? Elon leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. Jane, I get where you're coming from, but the world is changing. It's not just about how fast we go. It's about creating something that lasts. The companies that will succeed long-term aren't the ones that burn out their people. They're the ones that build a foundation of trust, sustainability, and well-being. Tesla's success has always been about more than just products. It's about the people who make it all happen. The tension in the room was palpable, but there was a shift. Not everyone agreed, but a few of the executives started nodding. Elon knew it wasn't a matter of convincing everyone at once. This would be a gradual process, and there would be hurdles to overcome along the way. But the real challenge lay beyond the boardroom. It was the question of whether Elon could stand firm in his vision when the external pressure mounted, when the competition grew fiercer, when the stock market demanded faster growth, when critics and even some of his own employees doubted the new approach. He knew he would face moments of doubt, but he also knew that the path forward required immense resilience and faith. As the days turned into weeks, Elon found himself more and more immersed in this delicate balancing act. Between innovation and well-being, between the needs of his company and the demands of the market. He was walking a tightrope, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. The tension at Tesla continued to grow. After Elon's speech in Geneva, there had been pockets of support, but the majority of the company's top leaders and investors remained apprehensive. For every enthusiastic backer of the new approach, there were several who doubted the practicality of it. Was Elon losing his edge? Could Tesla afford to shift its focus at a time when competitors were doubling down on aggressive innovation? Elon was no stranger to pressure. He had been through countless high-stakes moments throughout his career, but the stakes now felt higher than ever. This wasn't just about selling cars or launching rockets. It was about redefining an entire industry's understanding of success. The personal toll, however, was starting to take its toll on him as well. It was late one evening when Elon sat alone in his office, staring out at the city skyline. The weight of the world felt heavier tonight, the shadows of uncertainty creeping in from every direction. The team was starting to question him. Investors were losing patience, and competitors were closing the gap faster than anyone had anticipated. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Come in," Elon called. His voice tinged with exhaustion. Lucas stepped inside, his face serious but with a hint of concern. He had been a close friend and ally for years, but lately, their conversations had been strained. He was still skeptical of Elon's new direction, but as someone who had always been in the trenches with him, he wasn't one to leave without trying to make a difference. "You okay?" Lucas asked, his voice gentle. Elon let out a long breath and nodded. "I'm fine. Just thinking." Lucas took a seat across from him, carefully choosing his words. "Look, I've been on the fence for a while, and I've tried to see it from your point of view. I get it, I do. But I have to ask, are we really going to risk everything for this new direction? The tech world doesn't work on feelings, Elon. We're fighting for relevance every single day." Elon looked up at his old friend, a sense of frustration creeping into his chest. "I know it's hard, but it's not just about relevance, Lucas. It's about sustainability. It's about creating something that's not just fast but meaningful. People are burned out. They're losing their passion. If we want to build something that lasts, we need to change the way we think about success." Lucas paused, his eyes softening. "I'm not saying I don't agree with you, but it's hard to see the bigger picture when you're in the trenches. The market isn't patient, Elon. And people don't care about balance when they're looking at their stock portfolio." Elon stood up, walking over to the window and staring out into the night. The glow of the city lights flickered below, and in the distance, he could see the gleaming Tesla logo on the rooftop of their headquarters, a symbol of everything he had worked so hard to build. "I know, Lucas. I know it's a risk, but I'm not just building a company. I'm building a movement, and I think it's the only way forward." Lucas stood up and walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I respect you, Elon. I always have. But there's one thing I want you to remember. No one is going to wait for you to figure this out. You'll have to make a choice soon, and it's not going to be easy. Elon nodded slowly. He knew Lucas was right. It wasn't just about shifting the company's culture or altering the pace at Tesla. It was about disrupting an entire industry. And in the world of business, disruption didn't always come with a safety net. As Lucas left the office, Elon felt the weight of his decision looming larger than ever. Could he pull this off? Could he lead the company through this transition, keeping his vision intact, while also ensuring Tesla's continued success in a world that wasn't slowing down? The following days were filled with more difficult conversations. Elon found himself increasingly isolated in the boardroom, where investors and executives expressed their doubts. The numbers weren't adding up in their favor. Tesla's growth had slowed, and although the company was still profitable, the future felt uncertain. In one particularly tense meeting, Jane, the senior executive, voiced her concerns more strongly than ever. Elon, we need to face the reality here. We've built something incredible, but the market is changing. Our competitors are moving faster than ever, and we can't afford to keep up this mental health first approach. It's holding us back. Elon felt the anger rising, but he knew that now wasn't the time for confrontation. He took a deep breath before responding, his voice steady. We've always been about disruption, Jane. Innovation doesn't stop at the product. It's in the way we think. It's in how we treat people. We can't just be the best at making electric cars. We have to be the best at creating a company that lasts. People are our most important resource. Jane shook her head, clearly frustrated. People don't pay the bills, Elon. Customers and investors do. If we don't move fast, someone else will. The conversation didn't go well, and the atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. Elon could feel the walls closing in on him. His dream of a balanced, sustainable company was starting to feel more like a pipe dream than a concrete plan. As he walked back to his office that evening, he passed by the teams who were tirelessly working to make the next big breakthrough. They were still putting in long hours, still grinding away at the next innovation. He knew they were doing it because they believed in Tesla's mission. But he also knew that something had to change. Something had to give. Later that night, as Elon lay in bed, he thought about the resistance he had encountered. His mission felt more important than ever, but the path forward seemed increasingly uncertain. What if he was wrong? What if this idea of balance and well-being wasn't the way forward? He thought back to the words of Bishop, the lessons he had learned in the church about the power of patience, of resilience, and of faith. He had to remind himself that change wasn't always easy. It wasn't always quick, but it was necessary. And perhaps, just maybe, this was the defining moment that would determine whether his vision would live or die. Elon's nights were becoming longer. The relentless pressure of his decisions, the constant pushback, and the overwhelming responsibility weighed heavily on him. It was late one Friday night when he found himself sitting in the solitude of his office, once again looking out over the city. His mind raced through the events of the past few weeks, the boardroom tensions, the skepticism from his team, the investors who had begun to pull back their support. He knew that something had to change, but he still couldn't shake the doubt gnawing at him. Was this new vision worth it? There was a knock at the door, interrupting his thoughts. Elon. It was Sarah, Tesla's head of communications, a sharp and perceptive woman who had been with him almost since the beginning. She entered the room, her expression unreadable, but there was something in the way she carried herself tonight that told him she had come to offer something important. "What's on your mind, Sarah?" Elon asked, sitting up straighter in his chair. Sarah crossed the room and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. She was quiet for a moment, as if weighing her words. Finally, she spoke. "I've been with Tesla for a long time, Elon, through every high and every low. And I'm seeing something now that I didn't think I would ever see: doubt. In the boardroom, in the hallways, even in the eyes of the people who used to believe in what we're doing here. I can see it in their faces when they look at you." Elon's stomach tightened at her words. He hadn't needed to be told. He could feel the doubt growing every day, but hearing it from Sarah, someone he trusted, made it all the more real. "I know. It's been harder than I imagined," Elon admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I can't just abandon this vision. I can't give up on the idea that we can build a company that values people as much as progress." I've seen the burnout, the toll it's taken, but the world doesn't wait for you to fix it. And sometimes, I wonder if I'm chasing something that's just too big. Sarah turned to face him, her expression softening. It's never been easy, Elon. You didn't get to where you are by taking the easy road. You took risks, you defied the odds. And if there's one thing I've learned from you, it's that change doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from taking that leap of faith, even when it feels like the world is telling you to step back. Elon felt a knot in his chest loosen slightly as Sarah's words sank in. He had always believed in pushing boundaries, in making the impossible possible. But now, with so much on the line, he was questioning everything he thought he knew about leadership and success. Sarah continued, her voice steady but full of conviction. If you back down now, Elon, what does that say? What does it say to the team? What does it say to the world? You've already made your mark. You've changed everything. But if you give in to the pressure, if you let them tell you that the old way is the only way, then we'll never get the chance to truly change things. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He had been fighting so hard to maintain his vision, but the mounting pressure had started to blur his focus. Was he losing sight of the very principles that had made Tesla a pioneer in the first place? Could he truly lead the company through this transformation? Or was he just chasing a dream that wasn't meant to be? A long silence followed. Elon knew that Sarah was right. He had never been someone to back down from a challenge. He had taken risks before. Risks that seemed impossible. Risks that no one else dared to take. And every time, he had come out on top. This was no different. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but resolute. You're right. This is what I believe in. This is what we need. I can't turn my back on it now. I won't. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in weeks. That's the Elon I know. The decision had been made. Elon knew that he had to double down on his commitment to this new direction, no matter how hard it was. There would be setbacks, there would be doubters, and there would be times when everything seemed like it was falling apart. But if he truly believed that a new approach to leadership and success could change the world, then he had to be willing to fight for it, no matter the cost. The next day, Elon gathered his senior leadership team for a meeting. There was a palpable sense of tension in the air. It was clear that everyone was waiting for him to make a move, to clarify what came next for Tesla. Elon had been quiet lately, letting the doubts linger, but today he knew he couldn't remain silent any longer. As the room quieted, Elon stood at the head of the table. He could feel their eyes on him, the weight of their expectations, the quiet judgment from those who had grown increasingly disillusioned with his approach. But this was his moment. I've been thinking a lot about where we're headed, Elon began, his voice steady but firm. And I know that many of you have doubts. You wonder if this vision I've been pushing for is the right one. You wonder if it's too risky. I get that, but I'm not backing down. Tesla was never built on playing it safe. We've never followed the conventional path, and we're not going to start now. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. The world is changing, and we have to change with it. If we want to lead, we have to do more than just make the best cars. We have to show the world that we can create a business that doesn't just prioritize profits, but also prioritizes people. This is the future I believe in, and I won't apologize for it. And if that means taking risks, if that means going against the grain, then that's what we'll do. Together. The room was silent for a moment, and then, slowly, a few of the team members began to nod. The change wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight. But for the first time in weeks, Elon saw a glimmer of hope in their eyes. They were starting to believe again. It wasn't going to be a smooth road, and there would be more battles ahead. But this, Elon realized, was the moment where he had to make a choice. And with the weight of the world on his shoulders, he had made it. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, strategy sessions, and late nights. Elon had made his decision, but the real work was only just beginning. He had laid out his vision for Tesla's future, one that prioritized mental health, work-life balance, and sustainability, not just for the products they created, but for the people who made it all happen. The question now was whether the company and its people could follow through. Tesla's culture was shifting, but change wasn't instant. Some team members rallied behind Elon's vision, but others, especially those who had grown accustomed to the company's relentless pace, were reluctant to embrace the new direction. And then there were the investors. As the stock price fluctuated, the pressure from Wall Street mounted. Tesla's value had been built on its ability to innovate and scale quickly, and Elon's new focus on balance and mental well-being didn't sit well with everyone. Despite the pushback, there were small signs of progress. More employees began voicing their support for the new direction, and Tesla's HR department launched wellness initiatives designed to support employees' mental and emotional well-being. At first, the response was modest. Some employees embraced the changes, while others were skeptical, unsure how much of an impact these initiatives would have in the long run. But what caught Elon's attention was the shift in the company's leadership. It started with a few key figures within the company, like Sarah, the head of communications, and Lucas, his chief of technology, who began actively promoting the new vision. Their influence was undeniable, and slowly but surely, more leaders within the company began to speak out in favor of the changes. It was clear that this wasn't just Elon's fight anymore. It was becoming Tesla's fight. One afternoon, while walking through the company's headquarters in Palo Alto, Elon ran into Emma, a senior product manager who had been with Tesla since the early days. She was one of the people who had initially been skeptical of his new approach. But now, her attitude had shifted. "Elon," Emma called, rushing over to him with a bright smile. "I've got something to show you." Curious, Elon followed her into one of the team rooms, where a group of engineers and designers were gathered around a table, poring over plans for the next-generation Tesla vehicle. "What's going on here?" Elon asked, genuinely intrigued. Emma turned to the group. "We've been working on this for weeks. It's not just about the car. It's about creating a product that embodies your vision. We've been incorporating sustainability in every aspect, not just in materials, but in how the team works together." Elon's eyes widened. He hadn't expected this level of enthusiasm, especially from someone who had been a vocal critic of the new direction. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Elon said, his voice filled with a sense of pride. "You're not just building a car. You're building a future." Emma smiled. "And it's working. People are starting to feel empowered, not just to innovate, but to live balanced lives while they do it. We're still pushing the envelope, but we're doing it with more purpose, more intention." As Elon left the room, he felt a renewed sense of hope. The vision wasn't just surviving, it was starting to thrive. But there were still many hurdles ahead. Tesla's competitors weren't sitting idly by. Rivian, Lucid Motors, and traditional giants like Ford and General Motors were all ramping up their electric vehicle initiatives. If Tesla was going to maintain its position as a leader, it would need to do more than just talk about a better way of working. It would need to prove it. That evening, Elon received a call from Greg, one of Tesla's top investors, who had been vocal about his concerns regarding the company's recent shifts. "Elon, I need to be honest with you," Greg began, his tone businesslike. "I'm still not convinced this is the right move. I get the focus on mental health, but I'm worried we're losing sight of what made Tesla great, the drive to innovate, to disrupt. You know how important this is to me, but if we keep down this path, we could risk losing our edge." Elon took a deep breath, holding his ground. "Greg, I understand your concerns, but innovation doesn't just come from technology, it comes from people. We've been pushing our team too hard for too long. Innovation without balance is a recipe for burnout. It's unsustainable. What I'm doing isn't going to hurt us in the long run. It's going to help us. Tesla will be stronger because of it." Greg didn't respond immediately, but after a long pause, he spoke again. "You've always had vision, Elon, but I'll be honest, I've never seen you this uncertain before. This is a big gamble. Are you sure you're willing to go all in on this?" Elon paused for a moment, the weight of the decision settling over him once again. The company's future was in his hands, but so much was at stake. He knew that Greg wasn't the only one questioning him. There were others, too. But he couldn't afford to second-guess himself now. Not after everything he had worked for. "I'm all in, Greg," Elon said, his voice firm. "I believe in this, and I'm not going to back down." Tesla's success was never just about the products we build. It's about the people who build them. If we're going to change the world, we need to do it together. And we need to do it in a way that's sustainable, not just for the company, but for everyone involved. Greg was quiet for a moment, and then he sighed. "I respect that, Elon. I'll support you, even if I'm not fully on board. But just remember, you can't afford to lose focus. I won't, Elon replied. We're in this for the long haul. As the call ended, Elon felt both a sense of relief and a lingering unease. He had committed to his vision, but the road ahead was still fraught with obstacles. There would be more investors to convince, more employees to rally behind him, and more challenges from competitors who weren't about to let Tesla off the hook. But for the first time in a long while, Elon felt a sense of purpose. He had made his choice, and he was ready to see it through. As the weeks passed, the pressure on Elon only increased. While the internal momentum was building, Tesla's stock price had begun to reflect the mixed reactions to his leadership. The investors were skeptical, and the competition outside was getting fiercer. Rivian's launch was receiving rave reviews, and Lucid Motors was making headway with its luxurious electric vehicles. Meanwhile, traditional auto giants were throwing everything they had into the electric car race. But Elon was determined. He had taken his stance. He wasn't going to sacrifice the mental well-being of his team, nor was he going to abandon his vision of building a company that prioritized sustainability for both people and products. The question now was whether he could convince the world that his model was just as valuable as rapid, aggressive growth. One morning, as he arrived at Tesla's Palo Alto headquarters, he was greeted with the usual buzz of activity. But today, the energy felt different. There was an intensity in the air, a quiet undercurrent of anticipation that something big was about to happen. Elon entered his office, greeted by Lucas and Sarah, who had been working tirelessly to navigate the company's media strategy and messaging. Elon, we've got a huge opportunity this week, Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with determination. We've been invited to speak at the Global Innovation Summit in New York. It's a big deal. It's where the world's top leaders in tech and business converge. This could be our moment to truly make our case. Elon paused, thinking about the implications. The Global Innovation Summit was one of the most prestigious events in the industry. It could be the perfect platform to showcase Tesla's new direction. But he also knew that it wasn't going to be easy. He would need to face the very people who had been questioning his leadership, investors, competitors, and even a few former allies who had grown disillusioned with his approach. What's the catch? Elon asked, already anticipating the challenges ahead. There's one condition, Lucas said, his tone serious. You'll be sharing the stage with a few heavy hitters, people like Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, and Elon Musk's own rivals. The question is simple. Can Tesla continue to lead the electric revolution, or has it lost its edge? Elon nodded. He had always been ready for a challenge, but this one felt different. He had no choice but to step up, and this moment could define the next phase of his journey. Let's do it, Elon said firmly. We'll use this as an opportunity to show the world what we've been working on. As the days leading up to the summit passed, Elon spent countless hours preparing his speech. He knew this wasn't going to be an easy sell, but he had to make the case for his vision. He had to prove that the future of innovation wasn't just about speed and profit. It was about people, purpose, and sustainability. It was about creating a world where people could thrive while they changed the world. The day of the summit arrived, and Elon stood backstage, his mind racing. This was it, the moment of truth. He would have a few minutes to speak, to tell the world what Tesla stood for. And if he succeeded, it could change everything. As he walked out onto the stage, the bright lights of the auditorium made it difficult to see the audience, but he could feel their eyes on him, waiting for him to speak. The room was filled with some of the brightest minds in business and technology, people who had shaped industries, disrupted markets, and changed the world. He could hear a low murmur as the introductions were made. And then, the moment came. Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, the host said, and the crowd erupted in applause. Elon stepped up to the microphone, took a deep breath, and looked out at the sea of faces in front of him. For a moment, he felt a wave of doubt, but he pushed it aside. This wasn't just about him. It was about Tesla. It was about the future of the world. Thank you, he began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. I'm honored to be here today among so many incredible innovators. Tesla was founded on one core belief, that the future of humanity depends on sustainable energy. But as we've grown, I've come to realize that sustainability isn't just about the products we make. It's about the people who make them. It's about the well-being of our employees, our families, and our communities. He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. For years, we've pushed the envelope in terms of technology, and that's been critical in changing the world. But we've also seen the cost of that ambition. We've seen the burnout, the exhaustion, and the toll it's taken on the people who drive this company. And the truth is, if we don't prioritize people, we won't be able to continue innovating in the way the world needs. We can't just build the next great car, the next great battery, or the next great solar roof. We have to build a company where people can thrive, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Elon could feel the tension in the room as he spoke. He wasn't sure how the crowd was reacting, but he knew this was the message he needed to deliver. We've shifted our focus at Tesla. Yes, we are still committed to pushing the boundaries of technology, but we're doing it in a way that's sustainable for our people. A company that doesn't care for its employees is a company that won't be able to innovate in the long run. So, we're changing the way we work. We're changing the way we think. And yes, it's a gamble. But it's a gamble I believe in. There was a long pause. Elon scanned the audience, looking for any signs of approval or skepticism. But it was hard to read. Then, he turned toward the next part of his speech, the one that would bring it all together. I'm not asking for approval. I'm asking for faith. Faith in something that goes beyond the balance sheet. Faith that people are more than just numbers, that innovation is about more than just a race to the top. It's about creating a future where we can all succeed together. This is the vision I'm committing to, and I hope you'll join us in making it a reality. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air. And then, something unexpected happened. A slow, hesitant round of applause started at the back of the room. It wasn't loud, but it was growing. Elon stood there, feeling a rush of emotion. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Tesla wasn't just about electric cars anymore. It was about building a movement that wasn't just about innovation, but about humanity. As he walked off the stage, he knew that the battle wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead. But this moment, this speech, had been a victory. He had taken a leap of faith, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like the world was starting to believe in his vision. The meeting dragged on for another hour, with little progress made. It was becoming clear that while some of the board members understood Elon's long-term goals, others were still focused on the immediate financial impact. The split between those who supported Elon's approach and those who questioned it seemed to be growing wider by the day. Later that evening, Elon sat alone in his office, reflecting on the meeting. He had spent so much time fighting for this vision, fighting for a future where mental health, well-being, and sustainability were as important as innovation and profits. But the weight of the board's skepticism was starting to feel like too much to bear. Could he continue to lead a company with such divided support? Was his vision even achievable? Just as he was beginning to spiral into self-doubt, Sarah knocked on the door and stepped in. "You good?" she asked softly. Elon leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "I'm just trying to figure out if I'm doing the right thing, Sarah. The pushback is intense. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this fight going." Sarah walked over and sat down across from him. "I know it's hard, but you're not alone in this. A lot of us believe in this vision. People like Lucas, Emma, and even some of the engineers, they're starting to see the bigger picture. You're building something that will have an impact, Elon. It might not be easy, but you can't give up now." Elon sat up, meeting her gaze. "But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm putting everything at risk for a pipe dream?" "It's not a pipe dream," Sarah said, her voice firm. "It's a revolution, and revolutions take time. They face resistance. But in the end, they change the world. Look at the people who've made history, the ones who dared to challenge the status quo. They were all told they were crazy, but they did it anyway." Elon felt a flicker of hope. "So, you think we can actually pull this off?" "I believe in you," Sarah said, her eyes unwavering. "We all do. Just remember why you started this in the first place. It wasn't just to build a car. It was to build a company that could make the world better. And that's worth fighting for." Elon took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in. The path ahead wasn't clear, and the pressure from the board was only going to get more intense. But Sarah was right. This wasn't just about him. It was about Tesla's future, and the future of the people who worked there. If he was going to make this vision a reality, he would need to dig deeper than ever before. The months that followed the Global Innovation Summit were a whirlwind of pressure, doubt, and strategic decisions. Despite Elon's unwavering commitment to his new vision, the company continued to face a mix of support and resistance from both internal and external forces. Tesla's stock was unstable, investor confidence was shaky, and competitors were relentlessly closing in on the electric vehicle market. But something unexpected began to happen. At first, it was subtle, a small shift in Tesla's internal culture that no one outside the company seemed to notice. Employees started to talk more openly about the changes Elon had implemented, about the initiatives that focused on work-life balance, mental health, and sustainable innovation. While some were still skeptical, there was a growing sense of unity among the employees who believed in Tesla's potential to be more than just a tech company. Then, one day, Lucas walked into Elon's office with a big grin on his face. "Elon," he said, his voice full of excitement, "I think we might actually be onto something here. Take a look at this." He handed Elon a tablet, which displayed a set of data analytics showing the response to a recent employee wellness survey. Elon studied the results. More employees than ever were expressing satisfaction with Tesla's new focus on well-being. They were engaging more with the wellness programs, attending more mindfulness sessions, and, most importantly, they were showing a renewed sense of commitment to Tesla's vision. "This is incredible," Elon said, his eyes lighting up. "It's not just talk, it's real change. People are actually feeling it." Lucas nodded. "Yeah, and here's the kicker. The innovation isn't slowing down. In fact, we're seeing a surge in creative problem-solving. Engineers are coming up with new solutions faster than ever. It's almost like this new approach is sparking a fire inside them." Elon leaned back in his chair, processing the news. He knew that these changes were just the beginning, but the data was undeniable. Something was shifting at Tesla. His vision of combining innovation with care for the people behind the tech was taking root. "Keep tracking this, Lucas. This could be the evidence we need to show the world that Tesla's future lies not just in cutting-edge products but in a culture that values its people." Lucas gave a satisfied nod. "We've got a lot of work to do, but I'm confident we're on the right track." Elon's phone buzzed on his desk. It was a message from Sarah. "Meeting in 15 minutes. Big news." Curious, Elon stood up and made his way to the conference room. As he walked in, he was greeted by Sarah, along with Emma, Lucas, and a few other key team members. "All right, what's the big news?" Elon asked, his interest piqued. Emma smiled, clearly excited. "You won't believe it, but we've just received an offer from a major strategic partner, a huge company that's been watching what we're doing at Tesla. They want to collaborate with us on a project that aligns perfectly with your vision." Elon's brow furrowed. "Who is it?" Sarah chimed in. "It's Amazon. They're interested in a partnership that could accelerate our solar energy and battery storage solutions. They see the potential in what we're building, and they're willing to back us." Elon was taken aback. "Amazon? That's a huge deal. But why would they want to partner with Tesla?" Emma leaned forward. "Because they know we're ahead of the curve. They see what we're doing with sustainability, and they understand that the future of energy isn't just about selling products. It's about creating a new ecosystem. If we work together, we could dominate the renewable energy space in ways we've never imagined." Elon paused for a moment, thinking. Amazon had long been a fierce competitor in many industries, but the idea of joining forces with them was intriguing. It was an opportunity to fast-track Tesla's impact on the world in ways that would otherwise take years. "This could change everything," Elon said, his voice filled with awe. "We've always been pushing to create a better world, and with Amazon's resources, we could do that on a global scale. But there's a catch. How much of our vision are we willing to compromise for this partnership?" Sarah shook her head. "That's the beauty of it. Amazon's been watching us. They're not asking us to change. They want to work with us as we are." Lucas added, "It's a chance to scale faster than we ever could on our own. Think about what we could achieve with Amazon's support. We could be the driving force behind the global shift to renewable energy." Elon stood silently, turning the idea over in his mind. The opportunity was too big to ignore, but he had to be careful. It was a delicate balance. He couldn't let Tesla's soul be swallowed up by a massive corporation, even if the partnership was lucrative. But if Amazon was genuinely aligned with Tesla's vision, this could be the perfect opportunity to prove that his model was viable on a global stage. "We'll need to move carefully," Elon said, finally breaking the silence. "We'll work on the terms and make sure they understand what we stand for. If this deal goes through, it'll be because we both see the same future, not just because it's profitable." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. But Elon could sense a shift in the energy of the room. There was hope, excitement, and a shared belief that the world was finally starting to see what they were building. As the meeting wrapped up, Elon felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about Tesla anymore. It was about leading a movement, one that combined groundbreaking technology with the well-being of people, creating a future where sustainability and innovation weren't just buzzwords, but the core principles of everything they did. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the challenges were far from over. But for the first time in a long while, Elon felt a surge of optimism. The world was starting to see what he saw. They weren't just building cars or batteries, they were building a future. And with Amazon's offer on the table, the journey was about to take a turn for the better. The news of the Amazon partnership offer spread quickly within Tesla. While the board of directors remained cautiously optimistic, Elon knew that making this decision would take more than just agreeing to a deal. It would require a delicate balance of both strategy and faith. He had fought long and hard for Tesla's soul, to create a company where innovation and human well-being coexisted. He couldn't risk letting that vision be diluted, no matter how big the opportunity. The first step was to meet with Amazon's leadership team. A few days after the initial offer, Elon and his core team were flown to Seattle to sit down with Andy Jassy, Amazon CEO, and several of their top executives. The air was thick with anticipation as the Tesla team entered Amazon's sleek, modern headquarters. Elon, Lucas, Sarah, and Emma were all present. As they walked through the high-rise lobby, Elon couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between Tesla's minimalist office and Amazon's well-oiled corporate machine. It was clear that Amazon operated on a much larger scale, but the question still loomed. Would they truly understand Tesla's vision? After a brief round of introductions, the group was led into a large conference room. The windows gave a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline, a city that had been transformed by Amazon's growth. Sitting across from Elon was Andy Jassy, a calm and collected figure whose reputation for strategic thinking preceded him. "Welcome, Elon," Jassy said, his voice warm but businesslike. "I've been following Tesla's progress for years, and I'm truly impressed with what you've built. At Amazon, we share a similar passion for innovation, and we believe there's a significant opportunity to work together. Our team is excited to help Tesla scale even faster, particularly in the areas of solar energy and battery storage. Together, we could change the world." Elon gave a measured nod. He appreciated the warmth, but remained guarded. "I agree, Andy, but I need to make something clear up front. Tesla's vision has always been about more than just making money. It's about creating a sustainable future, both for the world and for the people who work with us. That's what we're building here, and I won't compromise on that." Andy smiled, but his eyes narrowed with understanding. "We respect that, Elon. Amazon is built on a foundation of innovation, but we're also focused on creating long-term value. We believe that a partnership with Tesla could help us accelerate the transition to renewable energy, while also ensuring that we do it in a way that benefits both our companies and our employees. It's about aligning on values, and I think we're already on the same page." Elon leaned forward, intrigued. "What exactly are you proposing? What does this partnership look like in practice?" Andy paused, then gestured for one of his team members to present a detailed proposal on a tablet. The document was full of technical specifications, partnership logistics, and financial projections. Tesla would gain access to Amazon's vast distribution network, cloud computing power, and research facilities. In return, Amazon would integrate Tesla's solar and energy storage solutions into their own infrastructure, as well as use Tesla's electric vehicles in their delivery fleet. The partnership would provide Tesla with a significant boost in resources, allowing them to scale their energy solutions on a global scale. Sarah's eyes widened as she skimmed the proposal. "This could really take us to the next level." But we need to make sure Tesla's culture isn't lost in the process. Lucas, always the practical one, spoke up. I see potential here, but what about the long term? If we agree to this, it's going to be a massive shift for Tesla. We can't just let Amazon take over. This needs to be a true partnership. Emma looked at Elon, then back at the Amazon team. We're going to need a guarantee that Tesla's autonomy and mission remain intact. We can't afford to lose sight of our values, no matter how much we scale. Elon took a deep breath, listening to the concerns around him. As much as he had believed in the partnership, he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. A deal this big came with compromises, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to face them. I think we need time to consider this, Elon said, finally breaking the silence. This is a huge decision, and it's not one that we take lightly. Let us discuss internally, and we'll get back to you soon. Andy nodded. Of course. We understand this is a big step. Take all the time you need. Back at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto, the team gathered to debrief after the meeting. Elon knew that, on paper, the partnership with Amazon was a dream come true. But he also understood the potential risks involved. They could gain access to unparalleled resources, but at what cost? Would the Tesla mission still be protected, or would they lose control of their direction? It's a tempting offer, Lucas said, leaning back in his chair. But I agree with Sarah and Emma. We can't let Amazon steamroll us. If we're going to go forward with this, we need airtight terms that guarantee Tesla's autonomy. Elon sat quietly, considering their words. I've always believed that the future isn't just about products. It's about the people who create them. We've built something special here, and I don't want to lose that. But if we're going to do this, it's going to have to be on our terms. Over the next week, Tesla's legal and executive teams worked tirelessly to negotiate the terms of the partnership. They were careful to ensure that Tesla's values, its commitment to sustainability, its focus on innovation, and its dedication to its people, were at the forefront of every conversation. Every contract was meticulously reviewed, and every clause was scrutinized to ensure that Amazon would remain a true partner, not a corporate overlord. Finally, after days of intense negotiations, the deal was struck. The terms were clear. Tesla would retain its independence while leveraging Amazon's vast resources to accelerate its mission. The partnership was designed to help Tesla scale its energy solutions while maintaining the integrity of its vision. When the deal was officially announced, the world took notice. The news sent shockwaves through both the tech and automotive industries. Tesla was no longer just a car company. It was a global leader in sustainable energy, backed by the resources of one of the largest corporations in the world. Elon's phone buzzed with congratulatory messages, but one stood out among the rest, a simple text from Bishop Jakes. Proud of you, Elon. You've stayed true to your vision, and the world is taking notice. Keep pushing forward. Elon smiled. He knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. Tesla's mission had never been about the cars, the batteries, or the solar panels. It was about changing the world. And with this partnership, he had just taken the first step toward making that vision a global reality. The announcement of Tesla's partnership with Amazon set off a chain reaction across the tech, automotive, and energy sectors. Industry insiders debated the implications of such an unprecedented collaboration. Wall Street reacted positively, sending Tesla's stock soaring. Analysts predicted that this new partnership would not only strengthen Tesla's position in the electric vehicle market, but also give it a substantial edge in the renewable energy sector. For Elon, however, the excitement was tempered by a quiet apprehension. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Scaling Tesla's operations with Amazon's help was a monumental task, but it also meant navigating new challenges that he couldn't face alone. At Tesla's headquarters, the team gathered to discuss the next steps. It had been a whirlwind week since the deal was finalized, and now the focus was shifting to execution. Elon sat at the head of the table, surrounded by Sarah, Lucas, Emma, and the core leadership team. There was a palpable sense of optimism in the room, but also an undercurrent of uncertainty. They were entering uncharted territory, and no one could predict exactly how the next phase would unfold. I think we've all had a chance to digest the deal, Elon began, his voice calm but resolute. The partnership with Amazon gives us the resources to accelerate our mission, but we have to move carefully. We can't afford to lose sight of what makes Tesla special. We've built a culture of innovation, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that for the sake of growth. Sarah nodded in agreement. We've always said that Tesla is more than just a company, it's a movement. But we're going to need clear leadership to make sure we stay on course. Lucas chimed in. Exactly. We've got to be mindful of how we integrate Amazon's resources without losing our identity. We'll need to focus on what matters most, our people and the technology that drives us. Elon leaned forward, his eyes scanning the faces around him. He could feel the weight of their collective determination. Tesla had always been about pushing the limits of what was possible, but now they had to ensure that their rapid expansion didn't come at the expense of their core values. I'm glad we're on the same page, Elon said, breaking the silence. We've built a culture of innovation and trust, and I want to make sure we continue to nurture that as we grow. We can't let the scale of this partnership overwhelm us. We need to stay grounded, focused on what we're here to do. Emma, always the strategist, spoke up. I think we need to look at the biggest opportunity within this partnership, the renewable energy space. If we can harness Amazon's distribution channels and cloud computing resources, we could take Tesla's energy storage solutions global. That's where the real impact lies. Elon smiled, appreciative of Emma's foresight. I agree. Solar and energy storage are the next frontier for us. With Amazon's support, we could provide clean energy to entire regions, industries, cities, homes. It's the perfect complement to our vehicles, and it's exactly where we should be focusing our efforts. As the meeting continued, the team brainstormed how to move forward with the integration. They discussed everything from supply chain logistics to marketing strategies, knowing that every decision would have a ripple effect on Tesla's future. There was no room for error. This partnership was an opportunity of a lifetime, but also a delicate balance that could easily tip if not handled with care. The first major step in the integration process was to launch a series of joint initiatives with Amazon. The companies agreed to collaborate on a new, groundbreaking renewable energy project, a massive solar farm and battery storage facility designed to power Amazon's distribution centers and data centers. This would serve as a proof of concept for their larger vision of bringing renewable energy to the masses. Tesla's engineers were tasked with designing and implementing the system, while Amazon provided the resources needed for construction and logistics. The project was set to begin in the coming months, and Elon was eager to see it come to life. But as always, he couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of responsibility for the outcome. This wasn't just about Tesla's success. It was about proving to the world that sustainable energy could be both scalable and profitable. As the weeks passed, the integration began to take shape. Tesla's employees worked side by side with Amazon's teams, learning from each other and sharing knowledge. Elon made sure to visit the project sites frequently, checking in with engineers and field teams to ensure that the quality of Tesla's work was never compromised. But even as things progressed, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The pressure was mounting, and with each passing day, it became clear that maintaining Tesla's culture in the face of Amazon's vast influence was no easy feat. There were moments when the two corporate cultures clashed, differences in management style, priorities, and timelines. While Tesla was known for its agility and willingness to take risks, Amazon's approach was more methodical and data-driven. The push and pull between the two companies sometimes created friction, and Elon had to step in to mediate. One day, after a particularly tense meeting, Elon found himself alone in his office, staring out at the sprawling campus that Tesla had built from the ground up. He thought about the people who had believed in him from the very beginning, those who had sacrificed everything to help Tesla become what it was today. He couldn't let that vision slip away. No matter how big Tesla grew, he had to keep it rooted in the values that had guided him all along. A knock at the door broke his train of thought. "Hey, Elon," Sarah said as she entered. "You've been quiet today. What's on your mind?" Elon sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of this. It's a lot to handle. Amazon's resources are incredible, but I feel like we're losing something in the process." Sarah sat down across from him. "It's going to take time. Change is hard, but you're not doing it alone. We've all got your back, and we believe in what you're building here. Just remember, you started this because you wanted to make a difference, not just be another tech company. And that's still the goal." Elon looked up at her, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "You're right. We can't lose sight of that. We'll figure this out." With Sarah's words in his mind, Elon stood up and walked to the window. The city of Palo Alto sprawled beneath him, a world that was still learning to embrace the future he was building. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. Tesla's mission would always be about more than just profit. It was about creating a better world for everyone, and that was a mission worth fighting for. The weeks following the announcement of Tesla's partnership with Amazon were a whirlwind. The media coverage was relentless, the stock price surged, and everyone from investors to tech enthusiasts had an opinion on what this union would mean for the future. Elon felt the weight of it all, as did the entire Tesla team. The pressure to deliver on the promise of this partnership was enormous. And while the optimism was high, beneath the surface, tensions began to simmer. Tesla's leadership team had always been used to navigating uncertainty, but this was different. They were no longer a small, nimble startup. They were now a global player in a much larger game. The partnership with Amazon had the potential to revolutionize the way energy was produced and consumed worldwide, but it also brought with it new challenges. It wasn't just about building cutting-edge electric vehicles anymore. It was about managing a much more complex, global infrastructure. Tesla's expansion into energy storage, solar power, and grid integration was no longer a distant dream. It was a reality that had to be executed flawlessly. One evening, Elon sat in his office, scrolling through the latest reports from the engineering team. The solar farm and battery storage project with Amazon was moving forward, but there were already signs of friction. Some of Tesla's engineers were feeling the strain of working with Amazon's more rigid corporate structure. They were used to working in a fast-paced, creative environment, and now they had to contend with Amazon's meticulous approach to deadlines and data-driven decision-making. As much as Elon appreciated Amazon's resources and expertise, he knew that Tesla's innovation culture could not be sacrificed. He couldn't allow Tesla to become just another cog in Amazon's machine. He needed to act, and fast. "Sarah, can you come in for a minute?" Elon called out. Sarah, Tesla's chief operating officer, entered the room and closed the door behind her. She could see the concern etched on Elon's face. He didn't often call her in for these kinds of one-on-one talks, and she could sense that something was weighing heavily on his mind. "Everything okay?" she asked, taking a seat across from him. Elon exhaled deeply. "We're hitting some bumps with Amazon's culture. Some of our teams are struggling to adapt to their way of doing things. The pace is different. I'm worried that if we don't address it now, it'll affect the entire project. It's critical that we preserve our creative edge while still leveraging their resources." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "I've noticed it too. There's a difference in how we approach problem-solving versus how they approach it. We think on our feet, take risks. They take a more calculated approach. But you're right. If we're not careful, we'll lose that innovative spark that makes us who we are." "I don't want to lose that," Elon said, his voice firm. "I've always believed in the power of a small, passionate team with a big idea. I don't want us to become another corporate giant. We need to find a way to marry Amazon's resources with Tesla's culture of innovation." Sarah leaned back, considering the situation. "What if we create a cross-functional task force, a small team that includes both Tesla engineers and Amazon leaders? The goal would be to align our approach without losing our identity. We could use their data-driven insights, but we'll keep the focus on our mission." Elon's eyes brightened. "I like that. A small, agile team that can bridge the gap between our two cultures. But we need to make sure they understand what Tesla is all about. It's not just about efficiency and numbers. It's about changing the world." "I'll get on it," Sarah said, standing up. "I'll start putting together a team and reach out to Amazon. We'll need to make sure they're on board with this new approach." As Sarah left the room, Elon felt a small sense of relief. This wasn't going to be easy, but he wasn't about to let Tesla lose its soul in the process of scaling. If anyone could make this work, it was his team, and he had to make sure they had the tools and the space to thrive. The next few days were a blur of meetings, emails, and late-night brainstorming sessions. Sarah's plan for the task force began to take shape. She assembled a small group of Tesla's top engineers, along with a few key Amazon executives who understood the importance of innovation and autonomy. The task force's mandate was simple: to foster collaboration while ensuring that Tesla's culture of creativity and risk-taking remained intact. In the weeks that followed, the task force made significant progress. They met regularly, sharing ideas and discussing the challenges that each side was facing. The Amazon executives learned to appreciate Tesla's willingness to push boundaries, while Tesla's engineers began to see the value in Amazon's data-driven approach to scalability. Slowly but surely, the two cultures started to find common ground. But the challenges didn't stop there. As Tesla ramped up production to meet the growing demand for its electric vehicles and energy products, supply chain issues started to emerge. The rapid scaling required to meet both Tesla's and Amazon's needs was causing bottlenecks at factories and distribution centers. Tesla's production lines, once known for their cutting-edge efficiency, were now struggling to keep up with the sheer volume of orders. One of Tesla's top engineers, Emily, called Elon late one evening. "Elon, we've hit a serious issue with the supply chain," she said. "The volume of orders is overwhelming our systems. The new energy storage projects, the vehicles, we just can't keep up." Elon's mind raced as he listened. This was exactly the kind of pressure he had been fearing. But he knew that this was just another hurdle to overcome. "What do you suggest?" he asked, his voice steady. "We need to rework our production process. We've got to find a way to scale up without sacrificing quality," Emily said. "We're going to need more resources, more hands on deck. And we're going to need to be more aggressive about identifying supply chain inefficiencies." "All right, get the team together and start looking at all the bottlenecks," Elon replied. "We'll have a plan by the end of the week. This is a setback, but it's not the end of the world. We've faced worse." In the days that followed, Tesla's leadership team scrambled to address the supply chain issues. Emily and her team worked around the clock, devising new production strategies and sourcing additional materials. Elon oversaw the process, making quick decisions and pushing for rapid improvements. The pressure was intense, but Elon knew that it was these moments, when the company was on the edge, that defined Tesla's future. After several weeks of intense work, the production bottlenecks began to clear. Tesla's factories were running at full capacity, and the energy storage projects were back on track. The Amazon task force had also made significant strides in aligning their teams, and the partnership was beginning to feel more like a true collaboration. But just as things seemed to be settling down, a new challenge emerged, one that threatened to derail everything they had worked for. The new challenge that had emerged was unlike anything Tesla had ever faced before. As the solar farm and energy storage project with Amazon gained momentum, an unexpected environmental disaster struck. A massive storm system, stronger than anything in recent memory, rolled through the coastal regions where Tesla had been constructing several key facilities. The storm not only delayed progress but also damaged critical infrastructure. The loss was significant. Not only were construction timelines pushed back, but the storm had also damaged key components of Tesla's renewable energy system, including solar panels and battery storage units that had yet to be installed. Elon stood at the command center in Palo Alto, staring at the video feeds of the damage. The storm had wreaked havoc on construction sites and temporary storage facilities. It was a reminder of just how vulnerable the future of sustainable energy could be to the forces of nature, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. He felt a pang of frustration. This wasn't something they could control, but it was something they had to respond to. The momentum they'd built over the past few months was now at risk. Sarah walked in, her face grim but resolute. "We've got the full damage reports," she said. "It's bad, Elon. The storm didn't just damage infrastructure. It also took out several key suppliers. They're going to be delayed for weeks." Elon exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He had always prided himself on keeping cool under pressure, but this was a blow. The partnership with Amazon had given them the resources they needed to scale, but this disaster could undo all the hard work. The vision of clean, sustainable energy felt like a distant dream as he surveyed the destruction. "We need to move fast," Elon said, his voice firm. "Sarah, I want you to assemble a task force with our team and Amazon's. We need a recovery plan, and we need it yesterday. This can't wait." "I'm on it," Sarah said, nodding. "But we're going to have to prioritize. Do we focus on getting the damaged sites up and running, or do we redirect our efforts to other areas of the project?" Elon rubbed his temples. "We'll have to do both. I'm not willing to let this derail the entire mission. We'll do whatever it takes to get back on track." The room was thick with tension as the team scrambled to figure out a solution. Tesla's engineers, working closely with Amazon's logistical experts, started brainstorming ideas on how to repair the damage and continue moving forward. There was no time for hesitation. The future of Tesla's renewable energy vision was at stake. Over the next few days, Elon spent almost every waking hour in meetings, phone calls, and site visits. Tesla's engineers worked tirelessly to assess the damage and determine what could be salvaged. Meanwhile, Amazon's vast logistics network was leveraged to bring in replacement parts and raw materials from all corners of the globe. Despite the setback, the teams remained focused, driven by the same sense of purpose that had always defined Tesla. But even as progress was made, Elon couldn't ignore the growing pressure. There were still long-term delays to contend with, and the timeline for delivering Tesla's next generation of vehicles and energy products was now in jeopardy. The situation had tested him in ways he had never anticipated, and it was becoming clear that this wasn't just a test of Tesla's resilience, it was a test of his leadership. The next big hurdle came when they learned that a key supplier, one that Tesla had worked with for years, was unable to deliver critical components on time. Elon knew this supplier well. They had been a cornerstone of Tesla's operations. But the supplier had fallen behind due to unforeseen challenges of their own, and now their delays were cascading through Tesla's supply chain. It was the final straw that sent tensions through the roof. "Sarah, I need you to get on a call with them," Elon said one morning, his voice terse. "We can't afford this. If they can't deliver, we'll have to look elsewhere." "I'll handle it," Sarah replied, her tone sharp with determination. Hours later, she returned with news that wasn't much better. The supplier had promised to try to meet the new deadlines, but they weren't confident it would happen. Elon's frustration boiled over. He had put in so much work, so many sleepless nights, to get Tesla to this point. The idea of it all falling apart because of a few setbacks felt unbearable. But as always, he couldn't afford to give in to doubt or anger. "You know what we need to do," Elon said. "Let's find alternatives. We've built this company from the ground up. We can build it back up again. This storm, it's just another obstacle. It doesn't define us. What defines us is how we respond to it." Sarah smiled. "That's what I love about you, Elon. You never back down." The next few weeks were a blur of intense activity as the recovery plan began to take shape. The task force Elon had assembled with Sarah, Tesla's engineers, and Amazon's logistics experts worked around the clock. They sourced new suppliers, rerouted shipments, and expedited repairs. Slowly but surely, Tesla began to make up ground, though the road ahead remained challenging. But amidst the chaos, there was an unexpected silver lining. The storm, in its own way, had brought Tesla and Amazon even closer together. The challenges they faced were so significant that they had no choice but to collaborate in ways they hadn't before. For the first time, Elon saw Amazon as more than just a corporate giant. They were partners in the truest sense of the word. They understood the gravity of the situation, and they were just as committed to the mission as Tesla. In the final stretch of the recovery process, when it seemed like the worst was behind them, Elon received a message from the one person who had been watching from the sidelines. "Bishop, come to church," the message said. "I think it's time for you to hear something. You'll understand what I mean when you get here." It wasn't a message he expected, but it was one he couldn't ignore. Elon arrived at the church, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The storm, the setbacks, the pressure to deliver. He had lived and breathed these challenges for weeks. But as he entered the church, the familiar faces of those who had supported him from the beginning greeted him. The feeling of calm that washed over him was almost surreal. Bishop stood at the altar, a look of understanding in his eyes. "You've been through a storm, Elon, and storms come to teach us lessons we sometimes don't want to learn. But every storm has its purpose. Every storm can lead to new growth." Elon took a deep breath. In that moment, he realized something profound. The journey, the setbacks, the failures, they were all part of a larger purpose. They had shaped him, tested him, and ultimately strengthened his resolve. The mission to revolutionize energy, to create a sustainable future, it was more than just a business. It was a calling. And with that realization, Elon knew he was ready to face whatever came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?